Blog Talk Radio.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, whichever the case may be, for all of you listening everywhere out there across the world. Welcome to Vestiges After Dark. I am your host, Bishop Bryan Ouellette, finally here, because we've been having technical issues, and nothing upsets me more than things not going on time. But I think we've got it working out here today. But yes, welcome. I'm coming to you live from the foothills of the Appalachian Mountains on this April 20th, 2021. And we've got a special show tonight. We've got Michael and Marti Parry with us to talk about their work, mediumship, and taking your questions as well. The number to call is 516-453-0138. That's 516-453-0138. Call in now and secure your place in the queue. Don't hang up, or you'll lose your place in the queue. We've got 2 hours of fascinating conversation coming up here. Don't go away. We'll be starting in just a moment. Well, welcome everyone to a brand new edition of Vestiges After Dark. I apologize for the late start. I honestly cannot tell you precisely what happened. I think I know, but I cannot be entirely sure. Microsoft Windows has this very, bad habit of updating automatically. Even when you turn off certain like auto updates and everything, it eventually reaches a point where it just sort of happens. And today was one of those days. And apparently, whatever it did, it changed settings all the way around, let's just say that the way that I have it set up so that we can, go live on time, which is always a top priority of mine, particularly now that we're doing, live shows with callers. It's important because you advertise this weeks in advance. And if you don't start on time, you lose a lot of the people that were expecting you to listen. So it's just a pain in the neck. And apparently it just changed the settings for which microphone it's supposed to be using. Now, there's only one microphone hooked up to this, network, but apparently it thinks that there were other microphones, and it chose one of those that do not exist, which is why nobody could hear me when I was calling. I could hear them just fine. And if I had gone live on YouTube, you would have been able to hear me just fine. But we wouldn't have been able to talk through the switchboard. I don't think it was a Blog Talk issue, actually. I think it had to do with the update today from Microsoft. So I think we've got it resolved. I apologize. I'm a little frazzled because my screen started going crazy there, and I thought, oh, God, we're going to lose it again. And I was getting ready. It's like, we might have to schedule this one for next week. But no, I think we can go ahead tonight, and I think we're going to be okay going forward. So just to remind everybody, you can watch Vestiges After Dark on our YouTube channel, the church's channel, at the Nicolaitan Church channel. Just type in Nicolaitan Church on YouTube, and you will find our station. And then you can find the playlist for Vestiges After Dark. It all archives there as well. And so you'll be able to watch the on-demand from previous episodes as well as this one. In case you can't listen to the whole thing live, you can go back and listen to the parts you miss. That's all available on YouTube. And I encourage you to do the YouTube one because the sound quality is better. A lot better. Blog Talk Radio is really a very frustrating service. I've had a lot of problems with it. And tonight it was, the way the microphone was integrating with the switchboard on Blog Talk. So maybe it was on Blog Talk's end. I don't even know. I don't even know how we resolved it. We just fixed it. I don't have an engineer, which makes it a little more complicated than it would ordinarily have to be. So that's part of the challenge here. But it is now working. And you can, of course, listen on Blog Talk Radio as well as on Spreaker later tonight. It will post a Spreaker, and that's when it will be sent out to all of the major providers for podcasts, iTunes, iHeartRadio. We're on all of them. Okay, so you get a lot of options out there, but I do recommend subscribing to the Nicolaitan Church channel, and that's where you're going to always get the updates for when we go live and for shows like this, not just for when we do the other things and other events with the church. All of our podcasts are aired live through the YouTube channel as well. So that's the only announcement I have. Again, I apologize for starting late. It frustrates me. You don't really, I'm a little bit of a perfectionist. Actually, I'm a lot of a perfectionist, and I don't like when things go wrong. So I do apologize. But we're going to have a great show tonight. I can promise you that because we've got some fantastic guests. And I really can't say enough good things about them. We met, it's around I think it was Ghost Adventures Live was the first time we actually met and interacted. And, we have maintained a communication since then. And, several years ago, I guess. It doesn't feel like it was that long ago, but I guess it was. And I just have a great respect for anybody, not just because they're colleagues from Ghost Adventures, and I know you've seen them on Ghost Adventures as well as on many other shows. They've been on, other channels as well as Travel and Discovery Plus. You've probably recently seen them on the Cecil episode if you have Discovery Plus, and you've seen the most recent Cecil Hotel episode of Ghost Adventures. They were on that one, and their work is fascinating. I remember even before I even knew I would ever be on Ghost Adventures, I remember watching one of the earlier episodes with them and being just fascinated with the work that they do, particularly the uniqueness of their work. It's not just mediumship. They're not typical mediums at all. They're not typical people. I think, that's the wonderful thing about Ghost Adventures and why I love that show so much, not just because I'm on it, but because Ghost Adventures has such incredible guests. Zach really does, I'm not to pat myself on the back, but it's really true. Zach really picks unique people in this field, and it's nice to work with such a diverse group. And, we've had Patty Negri on before. We've had Darren Evans, we're all so different, and yet we have one thing in common in a lot of ways, and that's that we actually try to help people that are suffering from paranormal disturbance. That's something that I think is very much underrated rated in the work of the paranormal, and when you're dealing with people that are into ghost hunting or just into any kind of paranormal studies, there's not a whole lot of people that are actually helping. Not just families who might be in some type of paranormal crisis, which is, of course, a lot of the work that I do, and Sister Mary Joan as well. But in addition to that, also helping those who are lost and need some guidance to what I guess the common term is to cross over. And I kind of like that term because it's kind of accurate, and, everyone has a unique way of doing that. And I think we're going to learn tonight a lot about Michael and Marty's unique gifts and how they apply them to the work of the paranormal. That's why I wanted them on the show tonight. And I hope that, they'll come back for numerous episodes to discuss other topics as well. But we will ask them there in just a moment. But before we get started with our guests, let's go ahead and see how Sister Mary Joan is doing tonight. How are you, Sister?
Good evening, everyone. Hello from the wonderful world of Western Illinois.
That's right. You're not.
My parents this week.
Yeah, you're not local tonight.
Nope. I got to Illinois at 70-something degrees Sunday, and it snowed this morning. So yeah.
Well, that's fun. We don't get a whole lot of snow where we are, so that's a lot of fun.
It didn't last long, but it was pretty interesting to see first thing this morning.
Yeah, particularly since we're so close to May too.
Yeah.
I mean, it really shouldn't be. Yeah, it shouldn't be snowing right now. Not even up there.
No.
But the weather's kind of crazy, and I actually right now I would take the snow to the blooming trees here in Georgia with their horrible allergies that they're causing. This is one of the worst years I've had for allergies. I've already had a sinus infection. I thought I was finally beyond having those since I discovered the wonders of Zyrtec. But even Zyrtec's not helping. I've had to supplement with Flonase just to keep myself from, getting too congested. It's been a horrible season for allergies.
Yeah.
But anyway, let's go ahead and get started tonight. And just a reminder, please give us a call. I'm sure all of us here will be more than happy to ask or answer any of the questions you have to ask. That number to call is 516-453-0138. That's 516-453-0138. Call now and get yourself in the queue. I know that, starting late might have disrupted some of our plans here. So hopefully those of you who are listening live stayed with us and, are willing to give a call in and tell us what's on your mind. We'll also be looking at the chat room. So Sister Mary Joan, if you don't mind keeping an eye on the chat room, are you able to do that tonight? I know that.
I am on my phone. I don't have my laptop with me, so I will do my best.
Okay.
So just help me out in the chat room.
Yeah, if you can just keep a notepad next to you or something, and if you see a good question, go ahead and write it down. And as we go through the show, we will also take some questions from the chat. I know a lot of people prefer that. And honestly, I'm going to be completely honest. I really hate Blog Talk Radio. I don't like its sound quality, and I don't like its unreliability of its interface with things like we had tonight. I also don't like how it schedules a time, but it only gives you 15 minutes to prepare for it. And 15 minutes isn't a lot of time when you're trying to connect everybody, do sound tests, make sure that YouTube's working, putting posts out on social media to let everyone know that you're now live. It's not a lot of time. And if you miss your time slot, then you got to go all the way back and well, I mean, then you miss it, and then you everything that you scheduled for several weeks is now disrupted. So you have to start a whole new show page. It's a mess. Where on Spreaker, you just go live when you go live, and if there's some issues, it's not a big deal because you just push the live button and now you're live. Blog Talk has this schedule format, which is nice and professional, but at the same time, when you're having a problem, there's nobody you can reach out to get help. You have to kind of solve it on your own, like I did tonight. So, anyway, let's go ahead and get started tonight. So, let's welcome to Vestiges for the first time our colleagues from Ghost Adventures, Michael and Marti Parry. Hello, how are you tonight?
Hello, guys.
Hi. Hello, good evening.
Hello, sister. Hey, sister.
It's great to
Hey.
have you here. I really, again, I apologize
Yes.
for the issues with the sound that we were having. We're not able to connect at all. I always call Sister Mary Joan first. She's usually she lives about 2 hours away from where I live, so it's easier for her to call in than it would be for her to drive all the way out here and be with me live. So she allows me to do sort of like the sound test with the switchboard. And tonight she could not hear me, even though I could hear her just fine. It was a mess, but I think we've got it all resolved tonight. So thank you for
no
being
worries.
patient.
I know how that
Sorry.
is. I'm the one that has to do all the technical stuff, and I'm not very good at it at all.
No, I'm not. I mean, I guess I've had to be. I've had to learn to be fairly good at it, but it's like I really think I'm just getting by on the skin of my teeth. I'm really not. I didn't get into this work to do, broadcasting on a computer. It's not what I do. So.
Yeah, I know just enough about computers to get myself into trouble.
Yeah, well, that's kind of, I think we are in good company. Sister Mary Joan would probably agree with that too.
Oh yeah, I'm horrible with tech. Absolutely horrible.
It's crazy, but I'm just glad that we got it working. I'm glad that you're here with us tonight. I am very curious. I'm getting a little bit of feedback from something, sisters. Is that from your?
I hear it.
You hear it? I think
hear
it stopped
I'm sitting,
now.
I'm
Okay.
sitting still though.
I think that's better
Okay.
now. Okay. I always like to, when someone comes on the show for the first time, Michael and Marty, I always like to ask them, what got you into the work of the paranormal? Particularly when it comes to your particular gifts. So I'm assuming, you've always had these gifts, or you discovered them sometime early in life, and that might have, led you down the path of working in the genre of paranormal research and participation in the various things that we do in this field. But I always like to hear it directly. So what got you guys into this work?
Go on, Marty.
I'm trying to think. It just sort of happened. It's nothing that we had ever planned. When Michael and I got together, and we both have had abilities all our life, but it was just nothing that we did anything with. It was mostly just for our personal, whatever we use it for. But when we got together, we decided, let's do healing. We really wanted to do healing because we wanted to help people. And because of what came through for Michael while we were doing healing, he realized that the mediumship was actually more healing than the hands-on healing. So he was going more towards mediumship. I, at the same time, didn't know what I was supposed to do because I didn't hear very much.
Right.
And Michael was the one that told me that this is, he knew of a woman in England that did what I do. And he said to try it. And
you did. There we are.
Yeah, long story.
Yeah, really.
Long story short, I did it, and it worked, and we did it together, and it worked, and we used to do like the more metaphysical type things with the mind, body, spirit
kind of the
shows.
New Age movement.
And it's strange because we don't really fit into that, but we don't fit into the dark side of the paranormal. We're sort of like a bridge, I would say. We're sort of in between.
Welcome to our world.
We really do. Yeah,
anywhere.
we have a lot in common in that respect because,
Yeah.
a lot of the things, even though we're working on in different capacities, I'm more having to deal with this from the convention, I should say the unconventional aspects of the Christian religion, and having to apply that strange aspect that is connected to it, which is usually, of course, through exorcism ministry. But also, the mysticism that's fundamental to the Catholic religion, and not something that is often talked about. So, being kind of fringe in my own world, and then also having to connect that into the paranormal at the same time, and being, of course, a bit of an outcast in both worlds, because, the paranormal world doesn't tend to attract a great deal of Christians, particularly not Christian clergy. That's just not common at all. And so what you have is you're kind of an outsider there. And then because you are involved in the paranormal, you're kind of an outsider within your own religion. Because typically speaking, even in the conventional Catholic Church, exorcism ministry is kept very private. It's not publicized. They really sweep everything under the carpet and hide everything in their closet. They don't like talking about it, and they certainly wouldn't be doing shows like this. So, and they wouldn't go on a ghost show. They wouldn't go on television. They wouldn't go on Ghost Adventures. It's just not things that they would ever do. And that's because part of it is stigma. Part of it is just the fact that it's that weird little world, like you said, a bridge. But I also see it with what you guys do, because, you're not really new agey. And yet mediumship and psychic ability and that kind of thing tends to fall into that category very comfortably. But yet what you do is so unique. It really is at a very different level than what would be the average expectation that you would get from mediumship. And I don't know if my audience is completely familiar with your unique particularities, but why don't you describe how you kind of work together and what your unique gifts are? Because I know Michael, tends to be the one that receives these direct messages from those that have passed on, and you Marty, correct me if I'm wrong, but you kind of you're able to see them and draw them. Is that how it works, or how is it?
Yeah, we're both mediums. It's just that we use our different senses differently, because he sees a lot more, and not sees a lot more. He hears a lot more, and I see a lot more.
Well, I
see
them too. We
know,
both see them, but I just don't draw them.
Well, you don't see them as clear as I do.
Yeah, I do.
No, you don't.
Yeah, I do.
No, you don't.
Now, kids.
Sometimes we're two mediums and we're working together, right? So Marty is obviously can see them really, really well. Now I can see them as well too, because because I know when she's drawing someone. Sometimes I'll say, "Oh, I know who she's drawing for you,"
Nice.
and Marty can't hear me, so.
I always put on headphones so I'm not influenced by what he's saying.
I'll give you an example. One time, Marty was busy drawing away, and I could see this lady's Uncle Bob, and he was the one talking to me, and I could see him, and she didn't seem to understand anything I was saying. And Marty had been drawing already, for a little bit, and I felt like she had almost finished. So she had the drawing up, and I couldn't see it. And I said to her, "Can I have that a second?" And she's like, "Well, I'm nearly. Hang on, you can have it back in a moment. I just need to take it." And I didn't look at it at all. I just moved it around and showed this lady, and I said, "Isn't that your Uncle Bob that I'm talking to?" And she, her eyes just about bugged out. She said,
I
"Yes,
bet.
that's him."
Yeah.
Now, I didn't look at Marty's drawing, but I knew she was drawing him. And so sometimes we're that connected, well, I think quite a lot we are. And it's like we're both hooked in to the same people, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And there are some people at Marty's drawing that I have not seen. And then I have to go, well, who are you, and what's your name and what's your connection here, and that kind of thing.
When you see them, and this is a question for both of you, actually, when you see them, do you see them in a way that is truly physical? Like if you weren't closely paying attention, that you could almost mistake them for a living person? Is it that is it that external to you, or is it more of like a mind's eye or a vision or some kind of internal impression that you get? How does that work for you?
They're not see-through to me. It's like they're faintly there, if I could put it like that. I'm just completely aware of them. I can see them. Obviously, everything is in your mind's eye.
Right.
Yeah, everything you see in the physical is in your mind's eye.
Yeah.
So it's like,
Mm-hmm.
you know,
you're looking through a periscope in a submarine in life.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
So there's essentially no difference between the way I see people here and the way I see them there. There's no difference.
So it's like a faint, like something that you're seeing with your. It's something you're seeing with your eyes. It's.
I see them as I was trained to look with my eyes open at energy and see with energy.
Okay.
See things with my eyes open. So when I see them, I mean, look, I'm sitting watching the TV one day. Our friend was dying, and I was expecting his wife to call, and all of a sudden there he was, standing in front of me. And he said, "Hello, Mike.
Oh, wow.
It's Bill here.
Wow.
Tell Joan I'm all right, will you?" And I said, "All right, mate." And I looked away for a second, and he was gone. And when I called his wife, she didn't answer, and then
of course she's not at home because she's at the hospital.
well, yeah.
Yeah.
I wasn't really thinking. And then she calls
Yeah.
back 5 minutes later and tells me Bill died 10 minutes ago. So that was exactly when he died. He
Wow.
appeared to me exactly when he died. So, you know, it's not like I'm expecting it. It just, there he was, you know, and I could see him. And I went, "Hello, mate." And he was grinning, and I could see him smiling, you know, and I could see him just like I look at you guys. But they're not see-through to me. It's not like I can look through them, but they're like, kind of like an apparition, if you like. They look...
Yeah.
I don't know how to describe it, really. I know they're not solid. Like, I know when I'm seeing a spirit, and when I'm, you know, it's, you know, some people, they do have experiences like that, where they actually think it was a physical person.
Yeah.
They, you know, our friend works in the, our neighbor, she works in the, what do you call it, where they...
Mortuary.
The mortuary. And she had a guy delivering stuff one day, and he came in and he said, "Where'd that old man go?" And she said, "What old man?" "Well, the guy that walked past me and came in here." And she said, "There's
Wow.
nobody here. There's just you and me." And he says, "No, I just saw him." And he looked around the whole building, in every closet. He wouldn't believe her because it was that real to him.
Yeah.
So I think that it's maybe it's because I know they're not physical. You know what I mean?
Yes.
I know they're not physical, whereas they don't know they're not physical. It's like
Wow.
they're having this experience, and of course they don't know there's an afterlife. They don't think about people like the way I do, so they're perceiving it like they're a physical person.
Yeah.
Now,
Well, that
how
makes.
I see them is a little bit different because I don't see them standing there in front of me. Usually, you know, once in a while I've had that, but very rarely.
Right.
Mine is what you would call in your mind's eye, that I see them more or less inside, and I feel them, and I have other artists that help me sometimes draw them, and they come more and more clear as I'm drawing.
Do you find it's like a meditative process for you, Marty? I mean, do you find it's relaxing, or do you feel that you're entering into a different state of consciousness when you're doing this art, or are you very much, is it very much wakeful consciousness like you are right now?
Well, while I'm doing it, I really don't feel any different, but I have, I do notice when I'm, or if I'm startled or something while I'm doing it, then it's like that's very disruptive, and it bothers me. But it doesn't feel like a different state of mind, but it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we've done it so much that it's sort of automatic. You know, you don't. We used to have to meditate before we do it. Now we don't. We just, you know, maybe talk a little bit and boom, we're there.
Well, it's definitely something.
I listen to music, but it's, you know, I don't have to listen to music.
It's definitely.
I used to listen to music in the beginning for 5-10 minutes.
Right.
Get myself where I needed to be, and I knew it was a crutch for a long time, and then I decided one day, well, I think what happened was that my music player just wouldn't work, and so there I was, and I went, oh, bugger it, and off I went, you know, and I thought I don't need the music, and I can just do it, so I think things like that are crutches, you know, that we use, kind of like tarot cards.
Yeah.
Can be.
Yeah, it's almost like a ritual.
Things like that. They're just to get you from A to B, really. Mm-hmm. But like I said, we've been doing this for so long now. It's absolutely like second nature to us.
Yeah.
Well,
I wanted to go to something you were talking about too, about the Christians and the you know, paranormal or metaphysical or mystical. That people. A lot of Christians have really forgotten all the mysticism in the Bible, and
you're right.
A lot of it's been taken out, but there's still a lot in there, and there are a lot in there about mediums, and I have to point it out to some of the people that you know, say, oh, it's against the Bible. It's like, no, it's not. And we actually had a Methodist minister that used to come and see us every once in a while. She said, oh, if I told my parishioners this, they would just crucify me.
Yeah. Yeah. It's an unfortunate part, I think, of fundamentalism is where that really comes from. And even Catholicism has a fundamentalist aspect to it, which is, again, a carryover. Even if you were to talk to a Jewish rabbi, they would, and ask them, you know, what's the official Jewish position on mediumship, they would pretty much give you an almost Christian answer, that, you know, the Torah typically does not speak favorably about it. But when you really get into the actual words that are used, I actually did that today, and I had a whole list, and I lost it in the midst of all of this sound issue that I had. But when you look at the words, both in the Old Testament and New Testament, so Old Testament is written in Hebrew, and then New Testament is written in Greek, and you look at the meaning of the words that are typically translated as medium or sorcerer or, you know, a soothsayer or somebody that is using a tool of divination, you can find that there's a very specific type of thing that they're talking about, where in English these just sound like general terms that can be applied multiple ways. It's like, you know, the word love, for example. We can say, you know, that I love my spouse, but we'll also say we love our cat. You know, we love pizza. You know, we will use the word love for all sorts of different conditions, when in Greek you would never use the same word that you would use for love of a spouse for the love of a particular type of food. You would never use the same word love for your love that you have for God. These have all different words. They all mean love, and they would all translate to love in English, but in Greek they take on a completely different dimension. The same thing is true with the words that are used for mediums. So when you're looking at it in Scripture, it's very much talking about necromancy, people that are actually conjuring the dead, not people that have this natural gift where they're able by their very nature to perceive them in much the same way that you do. I mean, you're not, I'm assuming you're not casting some, you know, a magical circle and then conjuring spirits that can bring the dead, you know, over to this side. I mean, you're interacting with them in a very natural way from what you're describing, which is very different.
Well, that's what we tell people.
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes you got to keep it on the down low a little bit.
Yeah. You can't tell them those type of things, you know.
Yeah,
They think I'm weird.
there's a whole fridge of sacrificial chickens still set
Yeah.
And see, and that's really
No, you're right. It's just very natural. It's just you know.
And that's different than what they're describing in these words. When you read the actual meaning and what these words are that are being, I think, somewhat poorly translated in English. Not so much because the translators are doing a bad job or they're trying to be deceitful in some way, but simply because English does not really have the same nuance that Hebrew and Greek do. And so there's certain things that just don't translate well. And medium is one of them, because it's usually in the Bible, it's almost always every single time associated with a sorcerer or somebody that's using some kind of dark occult craft to do the communication. And that's usually through some form of conjuration. It's not talking about people that have a natural proclivity to hear the dead or even see them in much the ways that you are describing. That's not what's being described in Scripture. And unfortunately, that distinction's not being made. So you're not going to get pastors talking about it and telling the congregation, this is okay, but that's not. They just sort of do this, universal condemnation of it. And that's very unfortunate, because when you get into the kind of work that we do, which is spiritual problem resolution, and I know that you guys do some of that too, you need to know that there's a difference between doing dark occult rituals and having a natural, God-given gift. There's completely different things.
Yeah, you know what? That's really interesting, the way you explained all that. That's just really interesting, because it's almost as though there are these. It's like they've put everything in these boxes, and it's very difficult for them to think outside of the box. They have to fit it in the box, and if it doesn't fit in the box, they don't understand it. It's like like you said, the words aren't there for it, almost. And if they are, they're maybe in some mystical. They belong to some mystics.
Yeah.
I always think that the mystics of all the religions all can do this, because they're beyond their religion. They've gone beyond each religion, and they're the ones that I think are the people that really understand.
Yeah, I agree.
See, I always look at religion as a model. I don't. When people say, "Well, what do you believe in?" I usually will correct them and say, "Well, sometimes I'll be speaking in vernacular terms, and I'll say that, well, I believe this or I believe that." But if I'm being very specific, or I have an intention to convey a more actual way of describing this, I don't really have a belief system. I have a model that I follow that works for me, and I see religions as applications, various models that help to facilitate the particular thing that you're attempting to achieve spiritually. And so for me, the mystical side of Catholicism works very well for what I do. Christianity works very well for what I do spiritually. However, that being said, I don't see those things as beliefs. They're experiential realities that are very specific to my own journey. And this is why I'm very much against conversion, because I really think this has to be a free decision that's made based upon one's own journey. And you can't force somebody to say, well, this is the right religion, you need to follow this one, because that conflicts the entire purpose of the religion, which is to set one free. That's when you start taking religion and making it political. And so when you're talking about putting things into neat little boxes, this is what politicians do. And unfortunately, every religion has its own, government. Yes, it's a very. They're all political.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah,
they are. It's very. Yeah, they can't separate them really, because they're not pure.
Yeah,
they're not. Mm-hmm. They're not. What I find is that a lot of the people. I always thought of myself as kind of like a priest. I wanted to be a priest when I was young, and I think of what I do now as kind of like being a priest because I'm acting as an intermediary between the other side and here for people to facilitate a conversation to heal them. And I view our work as healing work because you get a person, they sit down, they want this to happen, they want that to happen, and then what you find out is that like I'll give you an example. One lady that sat with us, she'd sat a few times with us, and she was communicating with her husband and her son, I believe. And but in this one instance, there was a German officer standing there who I could see, and he brought up something about somebody being hung or nearly hung, and I thought, well, how can you be nearly hung unless you tried to commit suicide and it didn't work,
Right.
I said, do you understand this? And she said, I do. And this woman looked 60-ish, very well-off lady. And I said to her, do you understand that? And she looked at me and said, I do. What does it mean? She said, I was in a concentration camp.
Oh, sweet Jesus.
And
she was like 5 years old.
Yeah, she was about 5 years old.
Oh, my God.
And she'd been separated from her mother. And she explained, I said, would you explain what happened? And she said, yeah. I didn't tell her that I saw this Nazi officer standing there. I just wanted to see where this would go first. And but he's the one that brought it up. And so I just kind of kept quiet for a minute. And she started talking. And she said, well, one day this German officer was hanging all the children. And I was in the line, and one by one he was hanging us. And he got to me, and I said to him, if you were to hang me from that skinny branch on that tree over there, it would probably break, and I'd fall to the ground, and I'd be all right. And you'd be all right, too, because nobody would blame you because the tree broke, and we'd both be all right. And he just looked at her, and he said, get out of here, and he let her run off. And she ran and hid under one of the buildings. But then he continued hanging the rest of the kids. And then, of course, then I knew that was him. And I thought, oh, my God, what do I do now? So I said to the spirit people, do I tell her who said that to me? And they said yes. And I said, oh, my God. So I told her, and she just erupted. I mean, oh, my God.
Hope he rots in hell and everything.
Oh, my God. She had so much anger in her.
Yeah.
But the purpose was to release the anger from her because what they say, that hot coal burns you, doesn't it? It doesn't burn. So they wanted to dissipate the anger in her. And what else could he do? I mean, this man had committed horrendous things, but obviously he was trying to make amends for everything. Otherwise, he wouldn't be visible to me.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You see, he couldn't be there if he was in one of the hells. He just couldn't be there.
Right.
One of the lower realms.
Right.
So there he was, and I said to her when she calmed down a bit, I said, I don't know what to say. I mean, all I can tell you is this man is trying to make up for what he did in any way he can. And whoever put that in your head, I said, you're 5 years old. Who put that in your head to say that?
Really.
Yeah.
My God, maybe it was your mother who was already gone. That was like putting that in your mind to say that.
Somebody was looking out after her.
Yeah. So it's like that. There she was expecting to talk to her husband and her father, but they had a whole different,
Yeah.
They
anyway,
seemed to know what she really needed. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
She didn't. She was very angry at that session. But the next session that she came to see us, she seemed
a lot
so
lighter.
Much lighter.
Yeah, a lot different. Yeah. Something had shifted in her,
Yeah, and see
so
that.
I tend to view what we're going to do with people like that. I don't know what's going to happen. I just know some kind of something cool's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we've witnessed a similar thing as well, because a lot of times, we get called in for the darker stuff, but even the darker stuff is almost never genuinely demonic in any kind of Judeo-Christian sense. It's not the kind of situation that would require an exorcism usually. So a lot of the things we see are people that are being disturbed by unrested spirits who are, desperate and trying to reach out and making a mess of things in the process, and then having to find a way to help them, and so it is all healing. I tell people all the time that, what people are like, what's exorcism ministry? I said, it's essentially, it's a healing ministry. It's really in pure Catholic terms, it's an extension of the sacrament of unction, or the sacrament of the sick is what they kind of refer to it now, where there's the holy anointing with oil. People kind of know it as last rites, but it can also be used for people that are just severely ill and could use some spiritual assistance in that regards. And so it's a sacrament that the church can provide to help with that and aid in the process. It always helps them spiritually. It usually helps them emotionally and psychologically, and occasionally it will even physically heal them. So it's a very powerful sacrament. But when we go into these cases where people think I've got demons, or I feel like there's a demonic oppression, and then we, sit down and we actually do our investigations and we get to the bottom of the matter, which can sometimes take a while. But once we've gotten there, you find out that it's not demonic at all. These people need healing. And, so a lot of times we go in, they thinking they're going to come out with an exorcism, and they end up getting, a lot of olive oil all over their face. It's kind of the way it works.
Yeah, it's never what we think it's going to be when we go in. We can research it, get details, do all kinds of interviews, but it never, without fail, when we go in there thinking, okay, we got a game plan, nah. The universe throws a curveball, and it's a completely different situation. So it definitely keeps everybody on their toes.
Every single time.
Well, in your work, you're being guided in just in the same way we are. We're open to being guided by spirit.
Yeah.
To the highest purpose,
sir.
and as long as you keep that to the fore of your mind, like you guys do, we have utter faith that everything's going to be fine. It doesn't matter how, I mean, let's go to that, what's his name, Richard Ramirez.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd never heard of him, but compared to the Nazi, Ramirez he's a lightweight.
Yeah,
I'm sure.
I mean, the Nazis hanging hundreds of kids, I mean.
And yet he wasn't ready to. He wasn't ready to make any amends or.
Ramirez, no.
Yeah, he was remorseful.
I think Ramirez was possessed when he was alive.
I think
he
most cases
had that look in his eye.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In most cases, that type of
courtroom.
criminality, I find, is really basically a manifestation of some form of possession. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. And although we never really talk about possession, but in effect, when I do my work, I do allow them to possess me. It's like, I had a thing the other night. I was doing a Skype with a lady, and I do the Skype because I want people to be able to see me, because I do physical mediumship.
Right.
Just like when I was in the Dorothy Puente house with Zach.
Oh, wow, yeah.
And what was his name? Albert? Yeah.
It was Albert.
So I was comfortable with him, and I allowed him. I thought, well, I'll just let him do whatever he wants to do, And I was standing there staring at the floor where the wall, where the wall had been, and he was looking at his body. And I'm Albert, and I'm looking down there, and this wasn't on the show. And Zach says, "What are you looking at?" "My body," I said.
I could just say the look in his face.
Zach's face was like, "Who said that? You or him?"
What?
It's like, what?
I know the exact look. I know the exact look you're talking about.
I do too. I know that look. Say what?
Say what? Yeah. And so when I was on the Skype the other night with this lady, her father, who we'd actually met, had just died. And he came off his bicycle, whacked his head, and he died. And so he's talking to me, and he mentions Mike. I said, who's this Mike he's talking about? Oh, that's my boyfriend, she says. And then he got my hands, and he was doing something with my thumb. And he grabbed my thumb and I was watching him. You know, he was in me, and he was doing it. But I didn't know what the hell he was doing. I said, what are you doing? And she started laughing, and she says, oh, I know what he's doing. I know exactly what he's doing. He learned naughty words from his friend who was deaf in sign language, and he's telling me what he thinks of my boyfriend who just dumped me.
I love it.
So he's probably, I think he was calling him an asshole or something like that in sign language.
I know that sign.
It was very funny because I had no idea what he was doing.
Yeah.
I was like, what the hell are you doing with my thumb? You know? And
Well, now
it was very funny. I have no idea. I think I can only assume it was an asshole or something like that.
Yeah.
Along those
But
lines.
she started laughing. She's like, "Oh my God, I know he's telling me what."
Oh my goodness. Well,
So,
I'm assuming
you know,
Marty
it
didn't
was
draw
funny.
all that, right?
One time in a group session, a person came up to him afterwards and said, "You were signing the whole thing. Everything you said, you were also signing." And,
Oh, wow.
It was doing. Yeah, it was. I was actually in the middle of it, and I was about 20 minutes into it, and she says to me, "You're signing," and I said, "What? What?" She said, "You're signing everything you're saying." I said, "What are you talking about?"
Mm-hmm.
I just couldn't believe her. And two other people in the audience that knew sign language said, "Yeah, we've been watching you. You've been signing everything you've been saying since you started." I said, I was like,
that's
wow.
cool. That's just cool.
That blew my mind because I was totally unaware of it, you know.
Yeah.
That's
Wow.
really quite
I
fascinating.
wish it were that easy to learn how to do sign language, you know.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, absolutely.
Well,
Yeah.
it would be done.
Or any language for that matter. Well, I mean, there's a difference. I think that's a really good thing that you bring up there is the difference that there's the difference between possession and the terms that we tend to apply it.
Yeah.
And there's other kinds of possession that are more benign in that respect. And I think that what, unfortunately, again, the English language, when you say demonic possession or you just say possession, people are immediately jumping to the conclusion of something that's against the will. And, you know, that kind of possession is more like a rape. It's very different from the kind of thing you're experiencing. Yeah, where it's more like what they do in Voodoo.
Yes. This is what we're doing is conscious, aware. We're doing it
with an
knowingly.
agreement.
It's an agreement.
Yeah. Yes.
I know the people on the other side. You know, I mean, John Wayne has spoken to me so many times. I look at him as a friend over there. I know so many people that come by just to help out sometimes. So they're my friends, and this is a work we're doing, and I trust them. And
we both trust our guides on the other side. That they're not going to let anything, bad come through.
Yeah, they're not going to allow that to happen, and so I don't worry about it. Like Ramirez, when he was in the room, and I knew he was when I was up on the roof. Zach was somewhere in the building with Marty. I didn't know where he was. He'd taken Marty up into the building, and then they took me up to the roof. And so I was up on the roof, and I was connecting with the girl. I'd never heard of it. I didn't know who she was or anything. And I felt this petite Asian girl with black hair connect with me. And you see me on the show, and you see me go, she's... Well, then I said she's bipolar. I said that. Yeah, I said she's bipolar, this girl. And then I was feeling Ramirez. I didn't have his name or anything, but I could feel him around me. And I said, well, he's down on the 14th floor with Marty and Zach. But he's down on the 14th floor with Marty. And I don't mean Zach. Mm-hmm. And they all kind of... Aaron's face was fun.
Aaron's face is always
his
fun.
eyes just bugged out.
we love to tease Aaron.
That's that's where Zach had taken Marty, to the 14th floor, to that room. But I didn't know, you see.
Right.
So then when I got into the room, I really felt Ramirez there. And Ramirez, actually, his name is the only one I came up with, Richard. And, you know, I did have another name that had been ringing around in my head, and that was the, what's that woman that got cut in half? What's her name?
Dahlia.
Dahlia.
The Black
Yeah,
Dahlia?
yeah.
Yeah, I heard the name Dahlia in my mind
Well,
a
I
few
had
times.
said Diana.
I know, and when I walked in the room, Marty said, I was getting a name like Diana, and I said, well, it could be Diana, but I forgot that I heard the name Dahlia. I should have said it, because that was the name I was hearing.
Yeah,
And
because she had a connection to the hotel. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know if it was connected with Ramirez or any of the others, you know. It's possible there's some kind of connection there. But, yeah, it was just interesting, you know. Zach says, what's Richard doing here? And I said, well, he's here because you wanted him here. And then he says, what I can't remember what else he said. And then I said, well, you got me. You got him here.
Wow.
He's here. And I said, he's not going anywhere, this guy. He's earthbound. That was my take on, because I could feel him.
Yeah.
And he was very cocky.
And very vain.
But, yeah, you know, when
He
I was
was
up
in
on
life,
the,
too.
yeah, when I was up on the roof, when I was up there just with Jay at the beginning initially, and he was taking pictures, and I was getting kind of posy, and I'm not a poser. And I was thinking, it just felt weird. And I think Ramirez was with me right from the start when I got up on the roof. Because reflecting back on it, I thought, oh, he's around me. He was around me up on the roof there, you know.
Yeah.
So it was interesting. Like I say, people like, oh, my God, Ramirez, you know, God, what a creepy dude to give me nightmares. Like, well, you haven't met some of the others I've met, you know, like the Nazis and the mobsters I've met.
Yeah, he's bad, but there's always
there's
worse.
others that are way worse than him.
Yeah.
I think
There's
that.
some politicians that are worse.
Oh, absolutely. I would actually say
They're
politicians.
live ones.
Yeah, I would say
Live ones,
politicians are amongst the most evil that we you ever see. You know, they
right.
fully
You're right.
work into the category of what I call perfect possession. What's known as perfect possession. I might even stretch the definition a little bit further, but. I don't know too many politicians that probably don't qualify for that. So, but let's go ahead, and I don't want to take up all the questions myself. We got a caller here from the 480 area code in Arizona. Hello, you're on the air. Hello, Arizona, you're on the air.
Well, good evening, guys.
Hello.
Hey, good evening.
How are you?
We're doing well. We're doing
good.
well. What's your question?
Wonderful. Well, my question is, when you're doing readings on people, how much do you hold back as to what you share with them?
Ooh, that's
and
a
how
good
do you
question.
decide
Absolutely
what to
nothing.
share?
Yeah, I don't hold back. I only did it once, where I edited something, and it was because this guy was talking to his wife, and
it was in a group setting.
It was in a group of about 50 people, and I said, do you want to say anything to him or ask him anything? And she says, yes, ask him why he did it. So I asked him.
Wow.
Yeah, I
Wow.
asked him. I always ask them, and I mean, sometimes you'll get an answer, sometimes you won't, because they were just depressed, you know. There's no real answer there. So I asked him, and I said, can you tell me why you did it? And he said, yeah, I was having an affair with my wife's best friend. And yeah, I know.
Wow.
I was like, oh, shit. I'm not going to say that.
Yeah, let's pull you over to the side after we're done.
Well, hold on. So I was kind of umming and ahhing, going around it. Well, you know, he was a very, you know, he was this and it was that. I said, you know, and come the end of the evening, she was kind of one of the last people there, and she was leaving. And I said to her, come here for a second. I said, I need to talk to you. I said, when you asked the question, did you know the answer? And she said yes. So if I
That's what
told
I was
you,
gonna say.
if I
Yeah.
told you he was having an affair with your best friend, am I right? And she said yes.
Yeah.
And I said,
Yeah.
okay, now I've got
Yeah.
a question for you. Would it have been all right for me to say that in front of all your friends that you brought with you and everyone there? And she said yes. And I thought, that's it. I should have said it, and that's the only time I ever edited anything. And I don't edit any. I don't think it's the medium's job to edit things.
Now, there have been a couple of times where we've both felt like something was a certain way, but we've both been told not to say it.
Yeah, if we only repeat what we're told to say. Like there was a guy that was, well, I'd probably better not say it because someone might be listening. But it was the way somebody died, and the guy that was with his wife that had come to see us, he felt
responsible.
He felt responsible for the guy's death, and the guy wouldn't let me say
that he had any
responsibility for it. You see,
wow.
He said things in such a way that the guy had to accept what I say. It was the truth. He was telling him things that were factual, but he wasn't going to let this guy blame himself because, you know, he had a choice to not do what the guy had asked him to do, and then he'd still be alive. So, you know, there are times where, how can we put it, a white lie or from the other side.
No, it wasn't a white lie.
No,
it
wasn't
just
even a white lie. It was avoidance. He was avoiding telling him something that really wouldn't have helped him. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
And he did it because
I
he did it because he cared about him.
But we personally do not edit anything.
No, we don't edit anything. I tell you what you hear is what you get. That's it. I never edit anything.
So basically,
don't you feel the questions people ask, they already know the answer? They just want to hear it again. They just want validation.
You mean from the spirit world?
Yeah.
You mean
they know what happened, but
because
they just want to hear it again.
No, they don't always know. There are lots of things people ask me that they don't know the answer to, and when they get told, they often find out that it's completely true. So this is, you know, we're not there to just you know, make people to validate people's own thoughts. You know, there's lots of things that are told to people that they just have no idea of, and they go away and they find out. Like oh my gosh, they predict the future. They tell people. I'll give an example. I'm on the Skype recently, a mum, a daughter, and the daughter's husband. And I said to the daughter, oh, you're going to have a baby. You're going to have a little boy in July. And she didn't say anything, and neither did the husband, the mother.
Oh, geez.
I said, and several people on the other side said the same thing over and over. And I must have said it 10 times to her. I said, well, if you're not pregnant, then it's got to be the following year. But you're having a baby in July, I'm telling you. It's going to be a boy.
Yeah.
And she wrote me afterwards, after the session, and said, I am pregnant. And I'm due in July, but I haven't told my mother yet because I miscarried twice. And I'm scared to say anything. And I said, well, you're having the baby, I'm telling you, and it'll be fine. And then the mother wrote to us and said, oh, I do hope you're right. And I said, bloody hell, she still hasn't told her mother. You know.
But she finally did tell her, and we got a message from her mother. Oh, you were so right and everything.
Yeah, pretty funny.
So basically, the rule of thumb is just proceed with caution because you just don't know what's going to be revealed when you approach the paranormals with one of these.
Yeah. Expect the unexpected.
Yeah, that's the only rule.
Yep.
That's a great question.
Well, I have another question if you have time.
Yeah, go ahead. We'll take one more.
So when spirits cross over, I've heard they're earthbound or they're stuck to a particular place because they loved it so much, or they have unfinished business, or they're not here at all. So what makes the difference, whether they stay or they go?
Okay.
And do you
Most
believe
of it,
is there a purgatory?
Most of what we've found out, the people that think there's a spirit that's stuck, it usually isn't. It's usually a spirit that, might like the place, and so they keep coming back to visit, and they like to interact with people, so they'll interact with people. But usually they're not stuck. The only real stuck one that we've found is that Richard Ramirez.
Well, now because Ramirez, you see, we don't know him, and no one there knew him. Like he's not connected to anybody there. No, none of us know Ramirez. None of the guys on the crew. Nobody knows Ramirez. So he's like a street person. I will tell you this. There was a medium I like a lot called Leslie Flint, and in one of his sessions, who's the guy that sang "Thank Heaven for a Little Girl"?
Maurice Chevalier.
Oh yeah, Maurice Chevalier. So he's doing a session, and Maurice Chevalier is brought to his séance, and he comes through, and he doesn't know where he is, and he's like, "Hello, who are you? What is this? Where am I? What is going on here?" And this little old lady in the group says, "Who are you then?" And he says, "Chevalier, yeah." And she says, "Oh, is that Maurice Chevalier?" And he says, "Oh, yes. How do you know me?" He says, "Oh, I heard you died a couple of weeks ago." He says, "Oh, what?" He doesn't know what the hell's going on. He doesn't know where he is or anything. So then a few months later, he's brought back to the medium, to the circle, and he explains what happened. And he says, I never believed in any of this when before I died. He said, I thought when you were dead, and that's it. And he says, so for a few weeks after I died, I was wandering around trying to understand what the hell was going on when, nobody could see me, nobody could hear me. He said, I was poking people, kicking people to no effect. He said, wow. I couldn't get anyone's attention. And he said, I did have some success on one occasion. I was blowing very hard on this lady's neck, and she went to her husband, "Oh, did you feel that draft on my neck?" She said, "It's a rather draft here." And he said, "Yes, I succeeded there, but that was it." So he was wandering around, stuck. Because now why? Why are people stuck for a while sometimes? I think it's because they're blind in their mind. They've hypnotized themselves into believing something that isn't true. So when you die, your mind, you take your mind with you.
Yeah, you're not automatically enlightened when you cross.
Yeah,
right,
your belief may be so strong that it will blind you. You see, if you've kind of hypnotized yourself into believing a certain thing, and if it's not true, you could be stuck for a while. Especially people that, when you're dead, or they're very fearful.
No, they're fearful of reprimand or punishment.
In the book Ghosts by what's that big? What's his name? I can't think of his name.
Starts with an H.
Yeah, I'll think of it in a second. Anyway, this investigator takes a medium to a house, and he connects with a Civil War general. And it takes a while for her to understand what's going on with him, because he doesn't want to reveal things to her. He's very secretive in a way. But after a long time of connecting with him, several sessions over months, they gain his trust, and he reveals to them that he's a Civil War general. He gives them the street address where he used to live later on in life, and then he tells them that he didn't think he should move on because of all the men that died under him, and so he thought he didn't think he deserved to go somewhere good. So for about 100 years, he was earthbound. And he only met one or two other people that he used to converse with. And when you think about it, if you're stuck in the in-between realm, and it is kind of like an in-between realm, it's a place, but it's not,
it's more of a state of mind type place.
Yeah.
Right.
And if you think for 100 years you've got no one to talk to but yourself and maybe the odd person you meet now and then, you probably go a little bit doolally. You know, it's a bit like being in solitary confinement. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, I've always wondered, because the Bible says the dead know nothing. So I'm just curious at what point they become aware that they've passed.
Well, I guess it's which dead ones you talk to.
Well, like Michael's, our friend that was just appeared to us, as soon as he died. I mean, not even within minutes. It was immediately. So they're because he was very aware of the other side.
And I think a lot of it also has to do with the mindfulness of the individual, how well they facilitated that self-awareness in life, because that becomes very much the prerequisite conditions that sort of guide them later, which is why you'll hear me talk a lot about dying well. I think one can die very poorly and one can die very skillfully. And maybe that's the residual Buddhist in me, but the fact of the matter is, it does impact a person's fundamental properties of awareness. And so I think one of the biggest misconceptions that people have about the afterlife or death itself is this idea that as soon as you die, you automatically become omniscient, where now you know everything. And it's just not that way at all. It's not even close to that.
You take yourself with you.
Yeah. And your concepts of self, because it really is self in itself is a concept. It's a convention that largely we create. Some of it has to do with, of course, the whole nature versus nurture arguments in psychology, where, some of it is environmentally induced, but a lot of it, self-identity is largely self-generated. And we kind of create that based upon biases and paradigms that we manifest. And those things become attachments. And so I would say, at least in my work, I mean, Michael and Marty might have a different take on this, but they're actually going at it from a very different vantage point than I do. And like I said, I tend to see the darkest stuff in the work that I do. I don't really get a lot of the good stories. People don't come to me like can I talk to my grandfather or something? It'd be nice, but I mean, that's not the kind of case I get. What I tend to see though is that the people that are stuck or lost are really, that's just the result of their apathy in life. And so if one is apathetic spiritually in life, they sort of become that in death. And it's a very dangerous condition, because those lower realms that Michael was talking about, the hell realms, and it is definitely layers of vibration, you could call it. Once you fall into that, it's kind of like a black hole, it's dissipation at that point. And even when you read it in the scriptures, you mentioned the Bible caller, when you listen to what Jesus says about hell, he does not refer to it really in terms of that would allude to a place of punishment or eternal torture. It really is a place
not like that at all.
Not like that at all. It's dissipation. And largely our own fault.
Done.
I mean, in the sense that he's not sending anybody there. It's not like a judge that condemns you and you now this is your sentence. we tend to send ourselves there through our apathy and lack of skillfulness is really what it comes down to. At least that's my perspective on it.
Well, it's like
so interesting.
you go where you're comfortable. Like if you were a gang member and you always lived in these dark alley type place and everything was strife and everything. If you go to Beverly Hills and have a tea party, you're going to feel very uncomfortable there. So people, when
they'll all be looking at you like, what is the gangbanger doing?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, who invited that guy?
Yeah, and it's even more so on the other side because people can see you. I mean, really see you. They can see your aura, and they know who you are. And so you're not comfortable in these higher places if you've been a horrible person all your life.
Yeah, they can, your thoughts are visible on the higher realms. They're on the lower realms, they can cloak and hide things, just like they did on Earth.
Yeah.
See.
Yeah.
Now, one of the great, I like one of the shows I like best is Ghost, the movie Ghost, where that guy kills him. He's out of his body. He doesn't even realize he's died because he's in his duplicate astral body. And the guy that, he's a very dark individual. He has no conscience, the guy, the killer, And people with no conscience like that who commit atrocities, where else are they going to go? They gravitate to where they like attracts like, and you gravitate to those people that you are, you're similar to. It's as simple as that.
I like the movie. I like the movie What Dreams May Come with Robin Williams.
I was just watching that.
Yeah, it portrays, I think, some of that well.
The only thing I don't like about that is there's a lot of people that commit suicide don't go to a dark place like that. Because I know, because I committed suicide in my last life, but I was able to. We've had a lot of suicides come through too. So if they were in a place where they're, stuck and not being able to do anything, they wouldn't be able to come through to us. So that was the only thing about that movie I didn't care for. It's like they couldn't get any help. People over on the other side are there to help you, and you get a lot of help when you cross over.
Well, I know,
I
but
think it's common for people to think if you commit suicide, you're kind of creating your own fate for the worse.
I think a lot of it depends upon your reason for committing suicide too.
Yeah. Well, it's also, I mean, it's not a good thing to do. It, it'll stunt your spiritual growth is what it does, and you're going to have to come through and go through the same things, when you come back in the next lifetime or another lifetime. So it's like committing suicide does not get rid of anything.
Right.
And and it does cause a lot of problems, not even just for you, but for other people. So you're getting karma because you're causing that pain for other people. So it's definitely not a good thing, but it's not. Yeah. You're not damned for eternity because of it.
So I'm hearing from all of you, it's really important to take care of our mind and what we focus on and what we think about.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I would say that's the paramount thing. From my perspective, I think really the most important thing is cultivating skillfulness. And, if we're talking in purely Christian terms, the church doesn't typically use that term. It would mostly refer to grace. But when you think of it, what grace is really the means to become skillful. So it really helps to facilitate. So the things that you would do normally in Judeo-Christian convention is really there to help to facilitate a more skillful application of life, which is really, in many ways, preparation for meeting the challenges of death. And death is a challenge. I think, again, another misconception is this idea that, it's just, it's all taken care of. The biggest error of fundamentalist Christianity is this idea that Jesus has it all covered. You die and,
Right.
and he's done everything for you. There's nothing left. You're saved. You're good. You're good to go.
Yeah, they don't teach you anything past that.
No, they don't.
Because I grew up non-denominational Christian. They don't teach you anything past death.
Yeah. And it's unfortunate because
Yeah.
I think it's a very essential part of understanding the dynamic of working with, people at a pastoral level. And if you're not, meeting the challenges of where they're at, where you have to reach them pastorally, then you can't necessarily connect with them and help them at all. Anyway, this is Bishop Bryan Ouellette. We're going to take a short break here. Don't go away. We've got another half of the show to go. We're here with Michael and Marti Parry and Sister Mary Joan talking about mediumship, afterlife. Don't go away. Welcome back, everybody. I'm sorry that break took a little longer than I was expecting. I had something I had to take care of. But we are here with Michael and Marti Parry and Sister Mary Joan talking about the afterlife, paranormal, the work that is done as a medium. And we've got some callers on hold here. The number to call if you would like to ask our guests or ourselves a question, 516-453-0138. That's 516-453-0138. We'll be taking your calls here in the second half of the show and also taking questions from the chat room. Don't go away. Well, thank you, everyone, for waiting there through the break. Like I said, I had something I had to take care of, so it took a little longer a break than usual, but I'm back now. It's been just one of those crazy off-kilter nights, you know. Usually I'm a little bit more on the ball than this, but not tonight for some weird reason. But we're back for another half of Vestiges After Dark. We hope you're enjoying it so far. We're talking with Michael and Marti Parry about their work as mediums and their unique skills that they apply to the work that they do, and got some interesting insight into how they go about the work of spiritual problem resolution, which is what I see as the fundamental outreach that that my church does, and that's what we typically do. So it's interesting to get different perspectives, and it's always so fascinating to see how the work is so diverse. There's nothing that you can say, like Michael was talking about with boxes. You can't put these things into boxes because there's just no box that's big enough to include all of the possibilities and variables that could be dealt with. And each perspective is going to be different. Each approach is going to be different. I think that's really what I took away from the What Dreams May Come movie that we were talking about before the break, is that, you know, for that one individual, for his wife, for Robin Williams' wife, that was the only way in which she could, I think, cope with the tragedy that led to that conclusion, and that had to be worked out before she could arrive at a better place, which she was, and she got the help that she needed eventually. Fascinating story, and one of, I think, Robin Williams' best works, in my opinion. Calling in from the 415 area code in the San Francisco area. Hello, you're on the air.
Hello, everybody.
Hey.
My name's Tim. I called in before. I called in, I don't know, maybe like a month or so ago.
Well, welcome, Tim.
Anyways, thank you.
Hi, Jim.
Hello, guys. Parry, you guys are
Hi.
amazing.
Oh,
You
thanks.
do amazing things. Excuse me. I'll keep my question brief just to give other callers a chance as well, because I called in and we talked for some while about, excuse me, my father. You know, my father passing away and some of the spiritual concerns that I've had and some of the thoughts I've had for a long while. I guess this kind of dovetails off that, just to kind of make it personal to me. I lost my dad a year ago, and before that, I've been very intrigued about mediums and people that can kind of offer some type of healing. To be quite honest, I think it comes down to that, and the curiosity and the healing that can come from that. So my question to you guys is, I've been very curious. I've never spoken with a medium. I've never had a reading, nothing like that. How, and meeting some people like you guys, I don't know how possible that is. So for a regular person like me, who is, I'm Catholic. It's taken me a while to kind of get back, but I've worked hard and I put a lot of energy into my faith and tried, and I'm becoming a better Catholic. How, if I have curiosities to ever meet with someone who has a skill set that both of you have, how would you go about that? Given that, there aren't a lot of Parrys out there, to be quite honest, I don't think so.
No, they're one of a kind. They're one of a kind, Tim. You're never going to find them anywhere.
How would you go about?
Most likely not.
How would you go about finding somebody that you thought was legitimate? You mean? Is that what you mean?
Yeah. I mean, that's
I think
the
what he's
short
trying
answer,
to say. Yeah.
It's very difficult.
Well, first of all, when we meet you, we'd have to soften you up with a, like you do a steak. So we beat you up a little bit, tenderize you a bit, so that you're
It's
prepared.
all right. I played rugby at a high level, so I
okay, so you're used to that.
Oh, he might be a little tougher than we think then. No.
But see, they like it rough. You see, they like it rough. I would just serve you a nice scotch. It's a lot easier with me.
Well, if you did that, I'd probably have your drunken uncle sitting me and go, "Oh, I remember this."
Attract more bees with honey.
Well, the way we work, most of our clients actually come from word of mouth. I mean, we get some clients off of people watching us on the different shows, but more often it's word of mouth, and that's the best way, because then you've got somebody that you trust telling you that these people are legitimate.
Or they may show them a recording, because we make recordings, or we used to. So we've made thousands and thousands of recordings for people, and they tend to share them with people, other family members, and then, of course, it's right there. They're being mentioned, things about their life is being spoken about. Their father who died is talking to them, about them, and very specific things. So it kind of opens the door for them.
Yeah, the evidential proof is usually just, beyond any.
Yeah, you couldn't guess it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that's the starting point for us. That's basically how people come to us. It doesn't matter whether you're a Catholic, a Buddhist. It doesn't really matter what you think as the client. It makes no difference. It's got no bearing on what's going to happen with us.
We've had complete skeptics come to us.
Yeah. It has no bearing at all. What you think, what you feel, it doesn't matter. We're going to be speaking to people that we can see and feel and hear. And, there'll be people connected to you. It's as simple as that.
It doesn't even matter what the people that have crossed believe before they cross, because, they have to believe.
I've had people come through who've told, we have a friend that we've done a lot of sessions for, and then one time this guy's talking to me, and I said, well, this is his name. This is how he died, he's telling me. And, she says, that's my friend. You did a session for him, and he was a non-believer. And I said, well, he says, you were right. He says he's with the program now. He gets it. Now he's crossed over there.
What?
So it gets kind of funny sometimes.
We meet so many people that we've met in the physical realm, and then later their relatives come to see us, and we don't even know that person was related to them, and they come through, and it's like, whoa, that's sort of cool that we knew them both ways.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, to me, I was just going to say, to me, you guys, from what I've seen, from what I've read, and I've tried to diversify some sources, you guys are amazing, and I'm, your work speaks for itself, and you wouldn't have to beat me down so much to make me a believer. I am a believer,
yeah,
but I just didn't know how realistic it was to ever meet some people like you. And to be quite honest, it's a powerful subject matter. So I think some people's guards might be up, just given that we're talking about some of the most precious people and moments in our lives. But
that's a natural thing for humans to do, though, is to be guarded, especially, like you said, when it comes to things and people that are so near and dear to you. You want to protect that kind of an innocence in a way.
Yeah,
correct.
Well, that makes sense. I mean, this is a very special thing. I mean, I'll tell you a funny. One lady came to see us. I had no idea who she was because it had been arranged through a store. So she came up, and I shook her hand, and it was all sweaty. And I said, "Oh, you're nervous, aren't you?" And she said, "Oh, I am, yeah." I said, "You're a Catholic, aren't you?" And she said, "Yeah."
Probably.
I said, "Don't worry, it'll be fine. Just relax, it'll be fine."
But as far as wanting to, I mean, you were saying, you wouldn't get a chance to meet us. You don't ever have to meet us. We do it by Skype, by phone. It works.
Yeah, it doesn't make any difference.
It doesn't make any difference where we've done it around the world. I love this one that we did from Dubai. I mean, how many people in Dubai believe in mediums? I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
We get some calls out there too.
without
I mean, it's crazy. We get a lot of calls from basically the entire Arabian Peninsula for help.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a very common.
Those darn jinn.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's the jinn
over there wreaking havoc.
Yeah, they are.
Oh well, tell them you've got a gin channeler. That's what they think I do. They think I channel a gin or something.
Well, maybe you do. Maybe you would get one of these days.
Got a bottle of gin, yeah.
Well, that would be even better. As long as it's Scottish. I really am getting a taste for Scottish gin.
I just wanted to say
Scottish gin?
Yeah, Hendrix.
I'd love to tell you guys that I do believe it's in my future to do something like that. And yes, obviously, I'd love it to be with you guys. So maybe one day I can get that to work or contact you. I'm sure that I can. I guess I just wanted to say thank you for doing what you guys do. It comes through really genuine. It comes through like you guys care beyond the gifts that come to you so naturally. It seems you guys are very caring people. And I just think the potential for healing and for helping people is grand. So I just appreciate what you guys do, and thank you for discussing it with me. And it is something that I'm going to think about for a long time. And but as far as acting on it, I'd love to. So I just appreciate what you guys do, and thanks for talking.
Oh,
yeah, reach out to them.
Reach
out to them, Tim.
And Tim, before you go, if I could just interject real quickly, going back to what we were talking about in the first half of the show with the biblical prohibitions against mediumship and how the words really matter and how they've become sort of corrupted in our English understanding because the translations don't happen perfectly. Another thing that's really interesting, and it really bugs me because I did all this research, I had it up on my screen, it's gone now, it was completely wiped, so I wasn't able to really give you the exact Hebrew words because I don't know Hebrew, but I do a lot of reference to try to get to the bottom of certain meanings in Scripture. And what's very interesting is that one of the things that you see in Scripture with the words that are used to when they're talking about prohibiting mediumship, it's also a word that can be applied to charging money for things of that to swindle people. So sometimes I think really when the writers were putting these prohibitions into their scriptures, which eventually, became a part of the Christian mindset because we get everything from the Jewish world. It was really, I think, a caution against people that were claiming to be legitimate mediums and were just in it to swindle money from people. And so some of
how
that,
interesting.
yeah, and you wouldn't know it if you read it in
that's
English. But if you read it in the original,
that's really interesting. I didn't really think about that. That's great.
yeah. So I guess all this to say, I think sometimes the Bible doesn't really explain why it has certain things in there. It just sort of tells you, and then 4,000 years later, we're believing it, but we don't remember why. Where it probably,
you're right, because there's a little part in I have the Aramaic Bible,
mm-hmm.
and there's a bit in there where Jesus says to, I think it's Paul, and he says, go to, I can't remember where he sends him. He sends him to Greece or somewhere, and he says, and don't stop and talk to anyone. Just go straight there,
mm-hmm.
and don't even stop and say hello to anybody. And the guy that writes this, put this Bible together, he says, the thing is, if in those days, if you stopped and said hello, you'd be stuck at that guy's house for a week, because he'd want to invite you in and talk to all his friends and his relatives, and he'd feed you, and you'd never get there.
Yeah.
You'd go 100 yards, you'd stop to another guy, oh, hi, hello, come in, you'd never make it. So
yeah.
Jesus said, but it doesn't explain that. It
no,
just says,
it's
don't stop. Yeah, exactly.
It's the same thing with kosher law. It's like the prohibition against eating pigs. The problem is that the reason it was considered to be an unclean animal wasn't because of some crazy spiritual, connotation or something. It had everything to do with the fact that in those days, pigs were not really that safe to eat, nor were bottom feeders like shellfish and oysters and things like that. These are why these prohibitions existed. They had very pragmatic applications. It's just people forgot them, and because the Bible is seen as a spiritual work, they immediately assume that there's like some kind of mysterious spiritual reason that God makes these rules, and we're not supposed to question them, but the reality is they were very pragmatic.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I think it was really about trying to stay away from charlatans. I honestly think a lot of those prohibitions were to avoid charlatans and not get abused by them. So, hopefully.
Well, it's a good thing too, because they do exist. We had a lady that was sent to us to I think heal her, really, because she wasn't going to go see another psychic or a medium as long as she lived. Her friend told us afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
So she sent this woman to us, and we didn't know why she was coming to see us, and she sat down, and her friend in spirit, a wonderful man, came to talk to her. His name was Charles Pierce. If you look him up after the show, he was one of the most famous female impersonators in America.
Mm-hmm.
And she was like one of his best friends. And he came waltzing in, and he seemed gay, and I said, Tom's here. Well, she had a name for him, Tom. She called him Tom because she said, if you were called,
if your parents called you something very masculine like Tom, you probably never would have done what you do.
You never would have dressed up as women and done what you do. And so he thought that was hilariously funny. So whenever he'd call her up, he'd say, Tom here, So it was a little inside joke between them.
Gotcha.
And anyway, after the session, she wrote me this long letter, and because I really did let him take me over. And I was sitting across a chair. I turned the chair around. I was doing Marlene Dietrich impersonation. I grabbed the mop and the bucket that were in the room, and I was waltzing around the room like I was singing, and as Betty Davis and all that. And I didn't know who he was, but he was this famous female impersonator. And she told us in the letter that she had been ripped off for $86,000 by a psychic.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah. We get that, too.
Wow.
She spent something in the region of nearly $40,000 on,
candles
supposed,
and stuff.
Had us sitting in a tree, it's like putting up in hotels and all kinds of stuff. And then she stole her credit card and racked up another $40-something thousand on it. So she was so embarrassed that she didn't tell anybody.
Yeah.
And she wasn't going to go see anyone else as long as she lived. And so Tom came in to say it's okay, you know, you just picked the wrong one.
Yeah, I mean, see,
Yeah, right.
we had a case once where you know, we don't charge anything. The only thing that we ask is if you're having us travel long distance, which, you know, involves airfare or hotels and all of that cost, that you at least cover, you know, whatever the bare expenses are. But we don't, you know, we don't make a profit. We don't take anything for ourselves. It's really just to cover whatever those expenses might be. And honestly, if it ends up being less than what we estimated, then we give them whatever's back if they want it. Otherwise, sometimes they'll just say, like, put it towards the next case, and we do. But we had a case once where you know, we went to help a woman that had an individual, a boyfriend who appeared to be possessed by a jinn, and she was talking about how she had spent, you know, thousands of dollars on these shamanic healers that didn't do anything to help him. Which is why she eventually called us back, because it was a case that we had started working, then we lost contact, and then I guess she went and did all these other things and then called us back because those other things didn't work. And then she gives me $20 and she says, I wish I could give you more, but I spent all my money on those other people.
Yeah, you should have seen the traded looks between all of us. We're like, yeah, thanks for the gas money, guys.
Dollars.
Yeah, that's crazy.
We turned her life around again, you know.
Yeah.
Well, the spirit people did, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So I think for a few $100s, she got straightened out again. You know what I mean?
I think also sometimes if you don't get something back for what you've done in any situation, if you do a job of some, you know, if you clean somebody's yard, if you get something back for it, then it's evening out karma. Otherwise, it's an imbalance of karma that you're leaving them with an imbalance. So sometimes it's not really good for them to not charge.
Yeah.
Well, that's the way we look at it anyway, and I think people value what we do, and it's not a lot really, our fee really. When you consider that some of them are charging $1,200 more, even more.
Yeah.
I just can't imagine charging somebody $1,200 to do this.
And we're the best, so.
I mean,
darn right.
I mean, you have to look at it from the perspective that, I mean, you have to make a living too. You know, I mean, there are costs
exactly.
in that.
This is our full time.
Yeah, this is what you do.
This isn't. Yeah.
And it's the same thing with me. I think people think that, you know, religion's just supposed to be free, but it's like, you know, well, I can tell you right now, the landlord that, you know, holds the church doesn't feel that way. Delta Airlines doesn't feel that way when I need to fly somewhere and on official business. You know, the hotel doesn't feel that way. The rental car company, and none of these, they all want to be paid, and they all want to be paid full price. That money has to come from somewhere. But, you know, typically, you know, it's a lot harder for us, you know, because we can't, the church prohibits us from even being able to offer put a price on this. All we can say is if you feel so inclined to donate, it helps us to help other people. But, you know, typically when you give most people the option, they just take the service for free, and then you never see them again. Yeah.
Well, I mean, even priests, you know, in the church, they get paid.
Yeah.
I mean,
I don't, but they do.
That's what they do. Yeah. Well, most priests get paid.
Right.
They'll get their living quarters and stuff like that. So it's like, yeah, even religions pay their people.
Well, it's a cost. I mean, it costs to live, right? It costs to live. It's just a reality. So, you know,
Exactly.
I think reasonable cost is one thing. And that's very different from the kind of swindling that we see in Scripture. Next time I want to have you guys on this show again. So next time I will bring up all that material again, and we can go over it, and I can tell you the exact Hebrew words, and you can see how they can mean multiple things, and how the word can be applied to a swindler as well. So clearly the mind of the writer, when he was putting these prohibitions in, was thinking about protecting people from being scammed. And that's very different from what, a genuine, authentic, person like yourselves, what you guys do, and offering this wonderful service. So hopefully that, that answers the question and gives him some direction, because I think, it would be helpful for him to, we've talked before in the past, and it would be helpful for him to, I think, get some guidance there.
In the scriptures that are left in Corinthians, I think it's Corinthians 2:15 or something like that, they're talking about people, that can contact the dead, and they were saying it's okay if they have discernment.
Yeah, yes.
If you know who they are, yes.
The testing of spirits in John too, in the Epistle of John, also applies, because one of the I would like to take some questions from the chat room, and one of the ones that I saw there was, do spirits always tell the truth? And I mean, I can tell from my own experience, no, they do not. And sometimes it's intentional deception, and sometimes it's just ignorance. And like we said, they're not omniscient, so they can make mistakes too. They can have preconceptions too, and share falsehoods and create errors just like we do. But I think the question was mostly directed at you, so I'm curious to see how would you answer that in terms of how. I guess my question would be taking that question from the chat room, but maybe adding a little caveat to it. How are you able to discern when you're being lied to and when you're not?
Well, this would apply more to me, I guess, than to Marty, because I hear what they're saying.
Yeah.
Has anybody lied to me? I don't think that I've had a spirit that has deliberately lied to me, except one time where this guy was going on about how he was in the CIA and this and that.
But there was a reason.
Yeah, I know.
Oh, Lord.
And he was talking to his daughter, and I said, your dad was doing this and he was that, and then I became suspicious of him, and I said, you know what, I think your dad's lying to me. I think he's telling me a bunch of lies. And she started laughing. She said, oh, that's my dad. He just made shit up all the time. She said, when I was a little kid, he told me to wrestle the bear into the basement. And I went to school, and I told the mistress I had my dad had a bear in the basement. I got sent home with a note. I got told off and sent home with a note because I was making up stuff, and it was my dad, And I said, but he was doing it for fun, because she knew that that's him, that's my dad. He just makes shit up.
Yeah.
But like we don't deal with the earthbound entities. So
yeah,
no, we don't have people that lie to us. We've never, they never do lie to us, and we have our guides that would not allow people to lie to us.
It's really all boils down to what we're doing. We're trying to heal people and help people.
Yeah.
And so there's no point talking to someone that's going to be a liar. They wouldn't be allowed in. It wouldldn't benefit the person. There'll be no benefit there to it. So they're not going to let it happen. It's just as simple as that.
So they're kind of vetting the
Absolutely,
entity for you before you make contact.
Exactly.
Right.
Like Ramirez.
They have to get tickets to join.
Yeah, well, look,
Yeah,
Ramirez.
Like.
Can I hire some of these?
there.
It sounds like they're spiritual bouncers. Can I hire some of them for me? Because I mean, when we go into
You
our
wanna
work,
hear
we're
a
always
funny-
being
you wanna
lied
hear
to
a
all the
funny one?
time.
I got one here.
Yeah.
They are like spiritual bouncers.
Yeah.
When I was up in Reno one time, I was walking around with Marty, and it was cold, and I had a big coat on and a fedora, and I was just joking around a lot with her as we were going places, and I was like, "Yeah, I got Frankie here.
you get in my way, I'm going to rub you out, and I was walking around like this,
pretending I was a mobster.
Mhm.
And after a couple of days of doing this, because I was doing it quite a lot, I said to Marty, I think this really is Frankie the mobster. I said, there's this Frankie around me. And we, after about a week, we did a group at a house. And as I was saying goodnight from some relatives to this lady and her husband, all of a sudden I felt this Frankie. And I said,
oh, yeah, and Frankie wants to say goodbye, like that.
to them. And he just looked at me wide-eyed and he said, I know a Frankie that talked just like that. I said, was he a real mobster? And he said, oh, yeah. I said, more than break your arms and your legs? And he said, oh, yeah. I said, oh, my God, he's been hanging out with me for about a week. So on the way back to the hotel, I felt him around me, and I said, okay, what are you doing around me? Are you like a reformed mobster or something? And he said,
yeah, I suppose you could look at it that way.
I said, well, what are you doing around me? Are you my bodyguard?
Yeah, I suppose, yeah. It's kind of what I'm doing, yeah.
So he's my freaking bodyguard while I'm in Reno, this mobster. What better protection could you want than an ex-mobster, right? I mean...
Well, particularly if he can influence the tables in any way for your benefit,
You know what? I should have gone it. I should have asked him.
Unfortunately, they don't do those kind of things for us.
Right.
We can't even get the lotto numbers.
Well, can they even? I mean, is that information close to them as much as it is to us? I mean, is that just like how would you explain why certain things are not perceivable? Like, for example, let me give you an example real quickly. I once did an experiment with a Ouija board. A lot of my old audience, if anybody that's been listening to me for years, knows this story already, so I'll be very brief about it. I was doing experiments with a Ouija board back in Provincetown, Massachusetts, many, many decades ago, and we were trying to determine whether or not what we were getting was authentic, because it was moving around the board so quickly, and we had to have a person come and do the dictation, and it was going so fast they could barely even write it down, and it was so hard to keep up with what was being said. These long dissertations and all this information and content. So, I mean, and they were telling us incredible things that were just completely wild and crazy. And so I wanted to ask if they could prove to me that they really existed. And I said, I wasn't trying to be rude. I really just am finding this a bit difficult to accept, and I need some validation here to see, that this is true. And so I said, will you do an experiment with me? And they said yes. And so I said, okay, what I'm going to do, and I had a roulette wheel, and I said, I'm going to go in the other room. I'm going to bring this roulette wheel in the other room, and I'm going to close that door, and I'm going to shut it. But before I do that, I'm going to spin the wheel. What I want you to do is go into that room after it stops spinning and tell us what the number is. And then once you tell us what number comes up on the board, I'll go in there and check to see if it's right. Can you do this? And it said, yes, we can do this. And you know what? We did it 5 times, and it got it wrong all 5 times. It gave us a number, but it was never the right number.
Whoever the gambler was sucked.
Yeah. I wouldn't want to go. I wouldn't take him to Vegas. That one.
Well, I have had experiences where they've completely where they know what's going on and they've predicted things correctly and accurately. You know what I mean?
Right. Yes.
So, as far as gambling, I don't know, because I've never really asked them.
Right.
I don't ask them, honestly. But we did have a lady once, and her husband was speaking to her, and all of a sudden he said to me, I said, how is she doing now you're gone? I said to him, I mean, is she financially all right? I mean, you just died. You're not that old. He said, oh, yes. He said, I had lots of insurance, and she has plenty of money, so there's no worries there. So I told her that, and she said, yes, I don't have any money worries. What do I do with it? And should I put it in the stock market? you know.
No, he didn't. She didn't say that.
Oh,
She
no.
said, "What should I do with it?"
Oh, that's right.
And you just said,
And
"Whatever you do, don't put it in the stock
Yeah,
market."
and I pointed right at her as him, and I said, "Do not put it in this. Do not do. Just put it somewhere safe." Well, about a month later was the '08 crash, and
Yeah. Oh, boy.
it turned out he was a Wall Street banker, and he knew what was going on.
Interesting.
So he had the inside scoop. He knew what was going on, you see.
Yeah, so we did
I wish
have
I'd known. I should have asked him. I should have said, "What do you mean? Why are you telling her that?" You know?
Yeah. Well, I mean, because there was another case
That worked out well.
There was another case that happened in Florida. God, I can't even remember if it was when I lived in Orlando or if it was when I was in Palm Beach. I can't remember. But there was an old lady. I mean, she was like in her 70s or 80s who played the lottery, the local lottery that would have like the smaller jackpots, like the $4 or $5 million ones, and she would play those, on a fairly regular basis, and she won something like 3 times in the same year, and it would be like the odds of that are astronomical. So they kind of investigated the whole thing, and it made the news. And all I remember is that they asked her how was she able to predict the numbers, 3 times correctly to win these multi-million-dollar jackpots. And she said her husband, who was deceased, came to her at night 3 times and gave her the numbers each time.
There you go.
There
you go.
I don't know if you
totally
can.
cool.
I mean, I don't know if that was if that was actually what happened, but I mean, I don't see any reason for her to lie about it. So maybe they can do that.
No, it can. No, absolutely, they can do it.
Yeah.
I was talking to a croupier at the in Reno, and I asked him, "Does anybody ever come in here and win?" He said, "Well, there was an Asian guy came in one day, and he had a dream that he was going to win 6 straight hands at blackjack, and that was it. He was going to win." And he won 6 straight hands, and he walked out with $60,000.
But then
Lord.
he quit.
He quit at the 6 hands. He
Yeah.
did 6 hands, and he won, and he won, and he won, and that was it. And he walked out. And I'm like, "Whoa, I wish I could do that."
Yeah.
Right?
There's nothing wrong with that. That's fascinating, but it really does. It really makes you want to think. Dawn in the chat has an interesting question for you guys. She says, "Do the Parrys ever get spirits that come to them with messages for people that they have to track down and give the messages to? So have you ever received a message for someone that you don't even know perhaps who the message's for, but you have to find them? Has that ever happened?"
Yeah. What
No.
comes to mind, Marty? Remember the oh God, it's hard to remember everything. But there was a girl who had been murdered. I think she came through in a group eventually. But yeah, there is some things that come up sometimes, and I have to.
It's usually though the people in the clients.
It's usually to do with it.
They might have to find somebody. They might have it's connected somehow. It's
I see.
Never completely off the wall. There's always some way that we have a connection.
Well, how can I put it? When the stuff comes up, there's a lot of times people don't know anything that I'm saying to them, and they only find out later. So, we were working on trying to find this woman's body. She'd been murdered, and we were working with a police officer up in Monrovia in north of LA, and I was on the phone with him, and I did a little session with him, and there was a police officer in spirit talking to me. And I saw him, and he said he had lived up in that area and worked as a police officer a long time ago, he said. He gave me his name, first and last name, and he said he would try and help us find this girl's body. The cop didn't know what I was talking about. He didn't know who this was or anything. But then, within a few days, he went to see the grandmother of the girl that was missing,
and he told her what I'd said, and she said, yes, my grandfather was a mounted police officer, and that's his name, and he worked in Monrovia,
oh wow,
about 70 years ago. So
yes,
it's kind of like
it's
that.
always somewhat connected, though.
Yeah.
It's not like we got a message from John Jones, and he wants us to tell his wife that he's okay, and she lives someplace in Wisconsin. You know.
Yeah.
We don't.
I'm not going to go knocking on her door like,
no,
hey,
we don't
got a
do
message
that.
from you from Uncle Bob, you know? Like,
Yeah, that could pose some problems for you,
on the
I think, if you
ground,
did
and her
that.
husband would sue me because I killed his wife.
Well, have you? That's a question for. That's a question. I mean, if you ever seen or encountered a spirit that discussed the terms of their murder, and did you ever take it to law enforcement, and were they ever like suspicious that maybe you knew a little too much? Did that ever happen?
Well, I don't know if they've been suspicious, but we have worked on several big cases.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
They have to agree to work with us. It's not like we knock on the police door either and tell them these things.
Yeah, right. So you wouldn't if you got a message from about a murder, you would wait for them to reach out to you?
No, not necessarily. Well, it's very difficult because there's so many wackos out there that call themselves psychics, and they call up the police and say, "Oh, I know where the body is," and it's all bullshit, you know.
Yeah.
Speaking from the law enforcement person in the room, definitely a lot of quacks will call and say, "I have a premonition of a dead girl near the lake, and she was wearing blue tennis shoes."
Yeah.
So, pretty much for legitimate psychics or mediums like you guys, you'd have to find someone like me or someone like me in the department who's got an open mind, because most cops just kind of poo-poo the whole thing. But
they do.
There are those of us that do believe there are legit sources out there. You just got to be careful.
Well, there's a very dear friend of ours who lives in Wisconsin.
No.
Oh, Minneapolis.
Yeah.
Minneapolis. Lives in Minneapolis.
It's another
And
one.
he's about 80 now, and he's been a criminal psychologist for about, for many, many decades.
Several centuries, I think.
Yeah. He psychoanalyzed Jeffrey Dahmer for his trial.
You said it right. That's the first time you ever said it right.
I get kudos for that, do I? So, we've worked on cases with him. There was a very famous case in that state, Joseph Wettering. We worked on that case.
Jacob Wettering,
that's it, Jacob Wettering. And when they finally got the guy that they thought had killed him, he wouldn't confess. And the detective was about to give up on the case, and because he couldn't get him to confess to anything. They knew he was a kiddie diddler, but that's all they had on him, basically. And our friend who knows the detective, told him, go back and talk to him and tell him this, this, and this. And he told him everything we'd said to him. And he confessed.
Oh, wow.
And
that's pretty powerful.
Yeah,
because I knew I knew a lot of things that nobody knew, you see, and he told him everything we said, and then he confessed because he thought the detective must know. He didn't tell him where he got the information. But it was like he was saying, this is what we know, and then he gave himself up, you see.
Yeah.
And and then they did find the body, and that was a huge
I would have loved to have had.
Of course, we didn't get any credit for that.
Yeah, no credit for it. Nobody knows. Nobody knows we did that.
They're not going to give you credit for it. It's like when you're special ops. You go in, do a surgical strike, and don't get the credit for it.
That's right. We're like the airborne.
And there was a triple murder up or double murder up in Napa Valley that we helped solve. In fact, it was my drawing of the murderer. See, there are times that I draw live people, but I drew the murderer, and they found him, and it was him.
Wow.
Wow.
That's
But
fascinating.
it was never. Your sketch was probably never mentioned in the press conference, was
No.
Nope.
No. I wouldn't expect so.
Yeah.
But
Mel
it's
in
on
the
Psychic Investigators show.
Mel in the chat room asks, it was basically she wants to know if any animals have ever come through. Have you ever received messages from animals?
Tons of time. Yeah, I've talked to lots of animals.
All the time.
Really?
I've talked to horses, chimpanzees,
iguanas.
I've seen iguanas.
Iguanas?
I've got all their ferrets.
What is that
Oh my
like
God,
exactly?
I spent an hour talking to ferrets, and I didn't know, but the woman worked in a ferret rescue center, so all these ferrets showed up, one after the other. And the first ferret I saw was sitting on the sofa next to her, and I could see it, and it had this gold ring in its mouth, and I didn't know what the ring was for. And then about halfway through the session, she brings up the fact that she wanted the ferret, the one that I'd first spoken about, to be the ring bearer at the wedding. And I said, "Oh my God, that's the ring it had in its mouth." It was.
But it died before the wedding.
Oh no!
Before the wedding.
Oh no!
Yeah. So there's this ferret sitting there on the sofa with this gold ring in its mouth, and I thought, what's it got a gold ring in its mouth for?
That's funny. I mean, that's actually kind of funny. I mean,
Yeah, oh yeah. I
Very
talked to
sweet.
this woman. We did a session for her, and her father, I think it was, or her grandfather, brought a horse with him. I said, "Oh, they've brought this horse in here. This is what it looks like. This is its name." "Oh, that's my horse," she said. "Oh," and she started crying. And then after the session, so I was doing some communication for about 15 minutes with the horse, and then the session ended. And then she says afterwards, "Could we do another session and just talk to the horse?" I said, "Oh my God," I said, "that's a tall order." So we did this session, and for an hour I was like Dr. Doolittle talking to Mr. Ed for an hour, and this horse was just telling me all kinds of stuff, you know.
Like the dog that was the size of a pony.
Yeah, and there was a Great Dane in the stables. It showed me this bucket with like Christmas pudding in it. "You made this bucket of Christmas pudding for the horse?" And she says, "Oh yeah," she said. And the horse said it shared some of it with the other horse that looks like this, that went by this name. And she said, "Yep, it didn't get all of it. I'd take it over and give it some to the other horse." And all this stuff this horse was telling me, you know.
Mm-hmm. Rachel wants to know. I mean, do they have accents and regular voices like we do, or is it?
Yeah,
They
how
have
do they talk to you?
accents.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, they have accents. Yeah, I can tell if they're from New York, from Texas. There was a police officer we did a session for. He's a chief of police in a state, and we did a session with him. And this guy from Texas came through, who told me he worked in his department. He gave me his name and everything. Told me he killed himself, and he explained a lot of things. And he said, yeah, he was one of the guys in the department, and he was from Texas, and he'd shot someone, and he never sort of got over it, the fact that he'd had to kill somebody, you know, in his line of duty.
Yeah.
And he ended up taking his life. But he explained all that to me, the Texas guy. But I could hear his accent. It wasn't like he told me. I said, "Oh, this guy's from Texas. I can hear his accent." He said, "Yeah, he was from Texas."
Now, people that couldn't speak English, Michael can still understand them because it is telepathy. It's, you know, even though he can hear it, it's telepathy.
Well, what about the Chinese woman?
But they also can say things in their own language, and Michael, even though he doesn't know that language, can repeat that.
Yeah,
So it's kind of like the TARDIS on
doing
Doctor Who. It gets in your head and it sort of translates for you. Have you ever watched Doctor Who? It's a nice literary convention for the show, you know.
Okay, here we go. Gotta have the Doctor Who reference.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it works.
Sister,
No,
did you catch any?
hear them
Did you catch any
accent.
questions that I might have missed earlier in the show?
One was, can spirits talk to each other? Kind of like someone was asking about the Richard Ramirez spirit and one of the other spirits in the hotel. Can they talk to each other? Do they talk to each other? Do they have conversations? Do you ever overhear it?
Well, she's talking about Earthbound.
Earthbound people.
I would think so. Yeah, Earthbound people. Do they have
when they're not
Earthbound
and
interact?
There's no problem.
Yeah. If they're not
okay.
earthbound, no problem. They actually get to meet one another and you know, like I've had people come in and say, "Oh, I met John Wayne over there," and the lady will say, "Oh my God, my husband loved John Wayne. He always wanted to meet him," and he'll come through and say, "Yeah, I met up with him, and he's a great guy. You know, been things like that." And also when people are like, when we're doing a session, we might have different sides of family and friends coming through, and they'll say, "But they didn't know each other here." I say, "Well, they're all together here." And they're kind of chatting, you know, like you would if you
Family
went to a
reunion.
meeting. You're not going to stand there and not talk to people. I mean, you're going to say, "Hey, you were in the Navy?" "Yeah, I was." What branch? And like a couple of old Navy guys might start chatting together, you know, and they were like two grandfathers on different sides of the family, you know. So yeah, of course they.
But Earthbound people, it depends how aware they are. If they're aware of their surroundings, if they're aware of other entities around them.
Yeah, but that's a bit more like in the movie Ghost, you know, where he's on the railway train.
Oh yeah,
the underground train, and it's more like that. You're encountering like it's crazy land, you know. You're bonkers. You're insane because you don't know where the hell you are. You're nuts.
I imagine so.
You know? And nobody can see you.
No one can see you. You think you're not dead. I mean, it is an insanity, you know. They're nuts.
Yeah, definitely. Well, Michael and Marty, it has been a pleasure having you guys on. We're actually at the end of the show here, but I wanted to give a few moments for you to be able to tell the audience where they can connect with you, with I guess your social media, but also hiring you for services that you provide.
The best way to get a hold of us is going to our website, which is spiritart.com. Very easy. That'll give you all the information to get a hold of us. It also has all the information if you want to join us on any of the, Facebook or Twitter. And Michael does the Twitter. I do the Facebook usually.
I have to remind myself because I forget which one I'm talking to when you guys send me private messages from either platform, and I'm kind of like, wait a second, who runs this one?
It's okay. We forget who we are too, so we're interchangeable.
Well, I would love to have you guys back.
It's probably me.
Yes. Well, that's fine. I mean, I hope you guys will come back on, and I hope that we'll have a much more professional experience next time where we won't have to deal with that little glitch at the beginning of the show.
I think
no
you
problem.
guys, this is great. I've really enjoyed doing
I've
this with
missed
you.
you too. I love our conversation, so it's really good to talk to you tonight.
I can't
Just
wait
listen
to
to the
hook up with
stories.
you guys again and have a whiskey and sit
That'd
around
be great.
and see who's hanging
Tell
out.
stories.
That'd be fun.
Yeah.
Well, maybe
that'd be
maybe
great.
we'll do a show in the pandemic, and we'll talk about when this madness will be over.
Oh
God.
You better bring some whiskey then.
Oh, we'll need a case. Well, guys, thank you so much, and all of you, thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
And
Love you guys.
Good to hear. Love you too. Take care, hon.
Bye-bye.
God bless. And thank
Ma'am.
you, everyone, for joining us this evening. I hope you had a good time. I'm sorry for the glitches at the beginning of the show, but, you know, it happens. This is the deficit of doing live. And I think a live podcast is so much more interesting than one that is pre-edited and pre-recorded. You know, it's more interesting to have the interactions with the callers, so I hope you agree. Thanks to our callers who called in tonight. Thanks for all those wonderful questions in the chat room. And we'll be back next week on Tuesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time with open lines again. Hopefully no glitches. We'll see you then. Take care. God bless everyone.